thought it would be sort of fun and challenging. I've never done any public speaking before, so
Woo!
keep your tomatoes in your pockets. Don't throw them so quickly. This title, Longitudinal Studies for the Lean Startup, sounds very scientific. I guess I was feeling fancy. The simpler way to say it would be diary studies on the cheap. As Jan said, I'm Gabriel Miller-Phillips. I work for a health technology startup out of New York City. I live in Munich, work remotely. I'm the director of user experience and product for them. And Cohero Health is a technology company that focuses on helping people with asthma. Just curious how many people in the room have asthma. If you feel like sharing, should be a pretty good number, but I guess not so much. There are a few 100 million people worldwide who have asthma, and the problem that Cohero was founded to solve was essentially people with asthma. It's a very individual disease. It's hard to know exactly what causes it, how to manage it. People who have it don't always understand what they should be doing, what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong. And when they go to see their doctor, which maybe they do once a year, and the doctor sort of asks, well, how are you doing with your asthma? There's only anecdotal evidence. So somebody can say, well, I've been feeling good. I use it, of course, I use it all the time, just like you told me to. Of course, many people don't. People don't use their medications as they're supposed to. And with asthma, you're supposed to use the medication when you're feeling well to prevent asthma attacks and to prevent symptoms. So Cohero's goal is to provide a rich and smart data set to the physician and also improve people's health by motivating them and helping them remember to take their medications. It does that through this blue thing that you see on an inhaler. It's a device that you can attach to an inhaler, and sometimes this is actually now embedded in the inhaler. And when you use your inhaler, it sends data with Bluetooth to a native application on your iPhone or Android, which then syncs the data with a server, and that data goes further into the doctor's medical record system or a web portal for them to access. So the fundamental problem that Cohero has to solve, and that it's my job to make sure happens, is you sort of have to find out how to build habits for people who don't have them, people who aren't inspired to use their medication, they forget. And the question is, how do you learn how to build these habits correctly in a fast, iterative way if you're part of this young startup that doesn't have that much disposable income or time? So a great way to do that is with a diary study or a longitudinal study. I'll talk about what they are, which I guess I've touched on already, how you can run it cheaply, how you can plan it, execute it, and stay organized, and then how you can use the data that you get to sort of fuel your product roadmap. So longitudinal studies are important for a few reasons, and they're not always something that you need to run at your company. The first thing that they're great for is collecting qualitative data rather than quantitative. So qualitative data is wonderful for answering the why of something. So why are people using my app only on Tuesdays and Fridays, but not other days of the week? Whereas quantitative data is more data-driven. It's how are they using it? What are the analytics? What are they doing? Tracking user flows and so forth. Secondly, it's very useful if you're trying to build habits rather than drive conversions. So if you work for an e-commerce platform, let's say Amazon, you're probably primarily interested in how do you expedite the checkout flow? How do you remove friction points and make sure that there's no user drop-off throughout the system? And for something like that, it's very useful to do user testing, usability sessions, and so forth. And those really, you're not really interested in looking to see how people check out over time. It's kind of a one-stop shop, literally kind of activity. And then lastly, diary studies are great for having a stable of users out there who can use your product consistently and who you can mine for ongoing qualitative information. So if you're going to find qualitative data. You don't need a tremendous number of people to get it. In fact, this graph here is from the Nielsen-Norman group, which is a premier usability research group. And what it shows is that with about 5 or 6 people, you get about 80% of the learnings that you need. The more people you add, you still learn things, but the rate of return on those additional resources isn't as much value. So once you have people in your study and you're interested in knowing about habits, there are 2 ways that I approach thinking about habits. 2 different models. One is this model from B.J. Fogg, who is a professor of behavioral psychology at Stanford, and he advises some of the large tech companies out in Silicon Valley, like Google, for instance. And his equation about habits is pretty simple. It's the multiplication of motivation, ability, and triggers. So in the case of Cohero, motivation for somebody using the product would be, well, I really want to ride my bike to work every day, or I want to be able to go visit my friend who has cats at her house. And then the ability to do that is dependent on, well, do you have your medication inhaler? Is it where you need it, when you need it, and is it full of medication? And then the trigger for our application is something simple like a push notification at the right time when you're supposed to take your daily medication. Then there's another model which became really popular in the last couple of years called the hooked model. This is from Nir Eyal, who is a consultant. It has a couple components that the Fogg model has, specifically a trigger and an action, but it has 2 additional components which are interesting. One is the variable reward, and the other is an investment. So if you take a platform like Facebook, for instance, the trigger to use it might be something like boredom or loneliness, and then you're curious what people are up to, and the action is you log on to Facebook. The variable reward would be sort of a constantly changing news feed. So you have new information, you're rewarded with new content that's interesting. And then the investment that you make into the platform is, you like things, or you post things, or you share things. With the medical application, it's harder to know what kind of variable reward you can provide people for using their medication and what the investment would be. So those are some questions I didn't really have the answers to when I was going into my first diary study, and I was using the study as a sort of tool to see if I could flesh out this model canvas for myself. Then lastly, diary studies, like I was saying, are great for fueling the iterative design process. So I'm sure everybody knows the design, build, test, and repeat model, and they just provide endless data for that. So, getting started with a diary study and doing it cheaply means, first of all, finding people to include in the study, and then what kind of people do you want to include, and then how do you manage those people? So, finding people works really well, I found, through pay-per-click strategies. I like Facebook. You can do this with Google, but Facebook's, they have so much information on everybody that it really allows you to target your primary persona that you found through your research and so forth, and really hone in on those people, and then serve them up an advertisement that really speaks to what they need. So for asthma, it could be, are you interested in controlling your asthma? I don't know, I just made that up. I hope my copy was better when I actually did the ad. But then if somebody clicks it, you only pay for how many clicks you get. And if you're targeting 5 to 6 people, if you want 5 to 6 people in your study, I found that it's good to, you want to sort of screen about 10 times that many. So 50 or 60 people. Doesn't cost a lot to target that. It's a couple $100 at the most for a Facebook ad campaign to get you exactly the kind of primary persona user that you want to find. Then when you find those people and you screen them, you really want to look for evangelists, who are people who would become super users, people who are excited to use your platform. It's really filling a need. They are more than willing to do it for free and to tell you what they think, and they're doubly happy that you're going to give them some sort of a nominal sum, like $50 a week or something. And if you can't find these people, that is a pretty good red flag that you should go back to your product canvas design board and rethink what your value proposition is, because if you can't find these people, it's not a good sign. And then lastly, there are some free tools or very cheap tools that can help. Mixpanel lets you define events in your software that you can track and see sort of user flows and what people are doing. That's quantitative data. I know that Dyer studies about qualitative, but it's great to match up what people say they're doing with what you can see they're doing. Trello, good free project management tool. Lookback is really cool. It's a SDK library you can embed in a native application, and it allows users at will to record their screen and activate their selfie camera. So as they use their application, you can sort of see their facial expressions and hear what they say. It's great in the wild qualitative feedback to get. And then Drive, Google Drive, everybody knows for storing data. And Typeform is really cool, aesthetically pleasing survey tool. And then lastly, I'm not going to go into too much depth here, but this is a Trello board that's a template canvas for everything you would need to run a study like this, and I'm making it available to anybody who wants it. I shared the link with Jan, he's going to post it on the meetup group. Just briefly, it's a Kanban style board, and you have instructions and checklists so that each card here has to-dos. So like, how do you onboard a user? What do you do when the study's running? What do you do when the study's over? Your goals and validation techniques. So what's your primary goal? What are your secondary goals, and how are you going to measure it? Links to screeners, screener template I made, interview questions, consent forms, NDAs, and then participant lists. I really like having pictures of people to look at. It makes it feel much more human to me. And color code them, and then sort of an aspirational takeaway, what their key motivator is from your preliminary interview you do with them. And then as the study runs, you can collect feedback for each participant in a color-coded card. You make notes, you drop the look-back recording in there to save it, and then you can write your positive and negative takeaways, and then at the end of the study, you can sort of evaluate and look for patterns of 3 or more takeaways that have been expressed by your participants, and then sort of plot them, get high value versus low value, high effort to make versus low effort, and then drive your feature roadmap by choosing the high value, low effort features first. So thank you guys for listening. Yeah.